legal at treetop level, or I can fly perfectly legal over the water of the lake at 200 feet. I have to stay 500 feet from any man-made object or person. That's all I have to do. And assure that I can safely land the aircraft and things. But it's not a 500 feet above ground that you're required. It's not what the regulations says. So anyway, thank you. And
Thanks, Chris.
All right.
Does anyone have a lightning cable, just out of curiosity, on them right now? For an iPhone, iPad?
HDMI.
Why? Which
Just
email?
lightning to USB.
Did your phone die?
Lightning to HDMI.
Welcome to Open.
I was just going to say, I'll plug in Kevin's phone if you wanted to see the app.
Oh, no, don't worry about that. It's just RC Fly Maps, and it's just
Okay.
it's pretty basic.
I was like, oh, I don't have
What we want to do is jump into hardware really quick. So one of the ones I wanted to do is, Professor Levy was showing how they're developing their own software, which is awesome, by the way. Really impressed with what you guys are doing. But for some people, that may be too much of a hurdle, right? On the flip side, there's a lot of consumer drones. Like we've got the 3DR Solo, and we'll show you that. It's got a nice little GUI app you can put stuff on. But what I wanted to show you is kind of the middle ground that we've been using a little bit here at Colgate, and then ask other people to share. So we've been using the APM, ArduPilot software, and Pixhawk Clone. Okay, so I'll show you this one. When we get out to the field this afternoon, I've got another one, which is a mini APM, and the prices keep coming down. So the mini APM, it's my personal one. It was $50 for the APM. It was another $20 for the GPS, and I think I paid $30 for a radio with a OSD for telemetry. So for just about $100, I got the whole autopilot system that I can then put on my other RC aircraft. So, but with I'm just going to show you some of the cool features. Oh, could you grab the Sky Eye, because I want to show that one too. So the first drone I'm going to show you is this one here. So this is our bald eagle. We call him Sam. You can turn up the lights a little bit, Joe. This I got the plans online. This is out of Dollar Tree foam board. So the airframe on this was about $4. Okay. The electronics in this minus the autopilot is under $50. It's got 4 little micro servos. It's got a little $10 receiver, and it's got a little brushless motor. Okay. And I built this just for fun. And then we decided to slap the autopilot in there, and sure enough, it flies well. And it's actually got I got it taped shut, but it's got a camera bay on the bottom, so we can do aerial mapping with it. So I'm just going to plug this bad boy in and show you how it works with the Mission Planner software. I have the annoying buzzer turned off. Okay, so right now I've got the autopilot on. You can see his little flashing light in the back here. That's the arming switch. Okay, that keeps the motor and the flight controls neutralized until I arm it. Got a GPS, got a telemetry radio, 900 megahertz. I got it up front here because it will cause some interference with your servos if it's too close to them. Okay, it'll bridge onto the wires and cause some twitching. And this one's set up for 4 channels. I have ailerons, and then I've got a V-tail, which mixes rudder and elevator. So I've got yaw control, bank, pitch, and then a motor on the front, little brushless motor. This has what's called a prop saver. So it's a little rubber band that holds it on there, but it keeps it so it doesn't break when I land. The other thing I did on this one is it has a brake setting on the ESC, so when I shut the prop off, it stops it, which actually creates less drag than a freewheeling prop. Okay, so that's that. So now I load this Mission Planner software, which is free. 3D Robotics did a lot of support, but I think they took it over for some other code that had been written. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to plug in the ground radio. Here, hold on for a second. Come on. Thanks.
Is that the Hobby King GPS?
That was a Banggood. It was like $120 for the Pixhawk. It was really inexpensive.
I got a Hobby King, that same looking unit for 35, and the magnetometer.
Oh no! I mean that was with the Pixhawks and the GPS.
Oh, okay, yeah, I bought a second.
Yeah, so that's like so that's a different GPS. The Sky Eye here has the 3D Robotics one. Okay, so I got to plug in my little radio. So this is 900 megahertz. So this talks to the autopilot for telemetry, and then my radio. This is called a Tyrannus. This runs on 2.4 gigahertz. This is an amazing radio with an open source operating system on there. Allows you to do lots of stuff. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I just connect, and you'll see Mavlink connecting, and so now it's connecting to the Eagle, and it's downloading all the parameters that I have set on there, which control how the controls work, other thing, mixing. I also have this one set up for auto takeoff. So after I program a mission in, all I do is I take the Eagle and I throw it. As soon as the accelerometer detects the forward motion, the motor kicks in and it climbs up to 30 meters, all hands-free. And then it'll execute its mission from there. So you don't have to be an RC pilot to fly this. It does help while you're in the testing mode, though, because, what we found out, I think it was this one the first time we put it up. When I turned on stabilization, I had the gains reversed. So it started to roll, and it really started to roll. And so we went back to manual control. Okay, so this is the mission planner view. I'm just going to start out. I'll take you through it real quick. So we have our flight data screen, and as the mod moves the Eagle around, you will see the artificial horizon. Okay, so this will give you that information there. You have these sliders on the right and left that will give you altitude and airspeed. You have some other information on here, airspeed, ground speed, battery voltage, battery percentage use, so you can really monitor all the things on your aircraft. And then lots of other data down below, just some quick information, some actions you can take, some gauges. One of the cool things is all of this is logged on telemetry, so when I'm connected, I'm writing a log to my local machine, as well as there is an SD card on the Pixhawk, which is also capturing the detailed log, which is great to figure out why you crashed, when you crash. No. So next thing you'll notice is the map on the right-hand side. Obviously, we're indoors, so we don't have GPS, so it thinks we're off the coast of Africa somewhere. Clearly, we're not. Okay. Next screen. Yeah, go ahead.
Do you know if there's any way to kind of get around, like simulate GPS location?
Yeah, so one of the things you can do in this software, and I haven't turned it all the way on yet, but if you go into under the simulation tab, you can do what's called hardware in the loop, okay? And there's a blog on there, you can read up on it, but basically you can take a software package like X-Plane, which is a flight simulator. There's a couple other ones, JSB Sim, AeroSim, Flight Gear, okay? You select your simulator, and then it will take the simulator that's running on your computer, feed that GPS data into your hardware, and so you can test your missions and everything using simulation. So you can do that all indoors if you want. So it's called hardware in the loop, and basically it fools the Pixhawk into think it's actually in the air based on the inputs from the simulator, then it feeds it back. And you can do quite a lot with that.
I guess, so when I was in Europe flying drones, I couldn't get a GPS log for some reason where we were.
Oh, okay.
At all.
Right.
So I couldn't, at the time I couldn't figure out how to like program this.
Oh, okay.
Run the very specific GPS coordinates.
Right.
Do you know if there's any way around that with the software?
That I don't know yet. There may be, but I'm not sure. That's a great question.
Question about the flight data.
Yeah.
For airspeed, does it have a pitot tube on it? Or
So,
does it-
no. Now there is a pitot tube you can get to get airspeed. So it actually does a kind of a calibrated airspeed. It's not real accurate. One of the things. So the reason this has white wingtips, they used to be brown. I think we have flight video of it somewhere. But I think it's actually on here. I could go look for it, but I won't right now. What had happened, we were flying outside. We had about a 10-mile-an-hour breeze, and I had it set so it was a pretty low cruising speed. I think the cruising speed was set to about 12. And so it was flying fine while it was going into the wind. And then it started to turn downwind. And basically what happened was it's going to maintain altitude. So it maintained its altitude, and it's starting to go downwind, and it's going too fast to the ground speed, so it's cutting the power back, and it went into a spin. Deep fall, did a spin. At that point, I wasn't sure where it was. I mean, I could see it, but I was a little shaky on orientation, so I said, you know what, I put it in manual mode, and I cut the power, and I just let it come down. I didn't want it, we were, close to the edge of our flying area, and I didn't want to go out, have an excursion, and have a problem, so banged up the wingtips so I could let them back on. But that's just one of those things, if I had a pitot tube on there, it would have detected that. It would have actually added throttle to keep the airspeed constant, right? So it's just using GPS for speed. So for fixed wing, ideally, you want to use airspeed, okay?
You could have one on this.
We had one on this, but we could never get it calibrated right. It's something I just didn't have enough time to play with. Quadcopters, it's not a big deal. Airspeed doesn't really matter to them, right? Fixed wing, airspeed is something you want to pay attention to. So under the flight planner, I'm just going to go ahead and wipe this out, and I'll show you how. So I'm going to clear the mission. And this is showing part of the Colgate campus right outside of our library. And what's really cool with this software, again, for a lot of the out-of-the-box kind of stuff, you can get it on here. Let's say we want to map Taylor Lake. I can go in here, draw a polygon, add a point. It says, okay, sure you want to do this? Yep. And I just go here, 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 and then I can right-click. Oops, I didn't right-click. I'll move this so we can kind of do it however we want here. Why is it not right-clicking? There we go. And now I'm going to go ahead and do auto waypoints, and I'm going to do a survey grid. And what this will do is this will pull up the survey grid for that area. I have it set for the Canon camera, which is actually right now on the SkyEye. I can set my altitude. I can set the angle of the flight path that I want to follow. I can tell you which way the camera is oriented, and I can set a flying speed. This is 5 meters per second, which is too slow for fixed wing, so I'll set it up. Let's say we'll do 15 meters a second, which is roughly 30 miles an hour. And then I can add auto takeoff and landing waypoints, use return to landing. There's all these different options I have. Down at the bottom, what it tells me here is the mapped area, which is 10,000 meters squared. Distance, it's going to be a 4.5 kilometer flight. It's going to take an image every 18 meters, and it's going to give us a 3 centimeter resolution. So I know for your stuff you're looking at that. This kind of calculates a lot of that up front. So you can adjust your altitude to bring it down lower if you wanted it. For tighter resolution, rotary works great for a large area fixed wing because you got the longer flight time. This tells you it'll take 6 minutes and 15 seconds to do it and take a photo every 1.2 seconds. And boom. So you take all that, you accept it, and you have to have a home altitude. Yeah, okay. Boom. And basically this then builds your mission with all your waypoints. You'll see in here it does a takeoff, changes the speed to the flight speed that you want, goes to the first waypoint. When it hits the first waypoint, it starts triggering the camera, and it does your photos. You can then down all that into your post-processing, whatever you want to use. So that's how the mission planner works, which is pretty cool. So we'll do some demos with that this afternoon, hopefully, and get it to fly some grids over, and you'll see how that goes automated. And then, initial setup, there's a lot of different things here. You can go in like radio calibration, so you can see that, input from my different sticks will go on here, and we can calibrate that. We have different flight modes. And then the real guts of it is you go into here, you get your parameters list. And here's where I can set all the different parameters on the aircraft. So a ton of stuff in here. Some of it's set by default, but I can set, what the cruising speed is. I can set the gains on the control surfaces. I can set the takeoff power. So one of the things is on takeoff, I want 100% power, but maybe once I'm at altitude, I want to use up to 75% power for any changes in altitude. You can set how steeply it climbs between waypoints. It's extremely configurable. The good thing is there's really good documentation on it. So just I want to show you a little bit real quick again. So I kind of like the fixed wings one to get a longer flight time. This one will stay up for about 40 minutes at least. So I'm going to arm it here. Okay, so that's the motor telling that the electronic speed control is armed. And I'm in manual mode. If you look here on the... Okay, see it says manual mode right under the slider there on the right-hand side. Everybody see that right here? Okay, so manual mode, I've got regular control, flight surfaces, up, down, left, right, throttle on there, and we're good to go. Then using my transmitter, I can select different flight modes. So I'm going to put it in the stabilized mode. Now with stabilized mode, and this is kind of cool on a fixed wing because on a rotary aircraft it's really hard to see it. It just does it. But on this one, you look as I bank it, you'll see my aileron goes up to return it to level. Okay? If I pitch the nose up, you'll see the tail goes down. If I pitch down, you'll see it come up. And so what that does is that keeps it straight and level. Really makes them a breeze to fly. So in stabilized mode, I'm still in control of altitude and all that, but it's just when I'm not touching the sticks, it's keeping it where it's going. It makes it a very smooth flyer, and it's a return to level in stabilized mode. A couple other modes I have set on this one is I've got auto mode. Okay, if I'm in auto mode and I've downloaded a flight plan, if I were to throw this right now, here, come here, Mom. Let's see if this works. So be ready to flip that back up to manual. That one, right there.
Okay.
Okay. So if this goes, if I go forward, I don't know. I can't do it.
You didn't upload the map, did you?
No, I know, but I had the one on there. I don't think I have it on there sensitive enough. Okay. Anyways, if I do that, it should detect that motion and the motor will kick on. I'm not sure which program I have on there. So that's auto mode. The other one you have, which is really cool for the Pixhawk, is if I go to auto and I pull this down, this is called auto tune. And what this does is in this mode, I want to move the aircraft to extreme bank, at least 60-degree bank and at least 40-degree pitch. And I do that through about 10 cycles. And that actually teaches the autopilot the characteristics of the airframe so that the stabilization is as good as it can be for that airframe, which is great because you used to have to do that manually with these things called PID loops, which if you're into control theory is great. If you're not, you really don't care. You just want it to work. So I'm not into control theory, so I like auto tune. Makes it fly for the airframe. And then if I pull both of them down, I get return to launch. Programmed on here, it'll return to launch at approximately 30 meters, and then it'll just orbit. Okay, I don't have this programmed to land yet. I'll just do an orbit. The only other flight mode I have is manual, stabilize, loiter. So I flip this one down all the way, it goes into loiter, which just wherever it is, it'll just go into a circle. Which with the Eagle is cool because it looks like it's, flying around. So that's that one, and then real quick, I'll just show you with the other one. Let me turn this one off. One of the things with the Pixhawk, by default, the radios are all set to the same channel, but you can go in and have multiple channels so you can fly multiple aircraft on the telemetry side. So this one is the Sky. It's a little bit bigger aircraft. This is a Hobby King kit, plug and fly, which has motors and servos. All you need to do is put in a receiver and your autopilot. It was about $120. Pretty inexpensive. EPO foam. If you do crash it, a little tape and Gorilla Glue and it's back together. We know from experience. So this one, I'll again, whoops. This one we're using a Hobby King 9XR radio. So this is a 8-channel radio, goes for about $50 without the module. The receiver module is another $30. So it's a pretty inexpensive radio system to fly. I'll turn that on first. And we'll slide this out of the way.
What is your flight time on that model?
This one here?
Yep.
This one's about 40 minutes. This has a 5,200 milliamp battery in it. Once it's at altitude, all it needs is about a quarter throttle to maintain. So that's why we like the fixed wing. You can cover a lot of area where you can stay up for a long time, long loiter time. So we will plug this bad boy in. Okay, so that's the Pixhawk initializing. So on this one, we have, just kind of take you through it real quick. This is the receiver for the flight controls, RC flight controls. We have the 3DR compass and external compass and GPS. Here's our 900 megahertz telemetry. Got a little Mobius camera out on the wing just for video, just for fun. In the tail, we have a 5.8 gigahertz. That means the Pixhawk is now armed. It's beeping because I don't have radio control to the motor right now because we're not armed, which is good. This is a 5.8 gigahertz video transmitter, so we can get live video from the aircraft if we want. We use that in our simulation where we could then mount the GoPro under each wing. In this case, I have a Canon on here, and what I'm running on here is called CH. It's a Canon Hackers Development Kit. So it's some code you put onto the SD card. You put that code on there and it runs its own operating system on the camera. So if I turn the camera on, and I can't show you this, but let's see. Okay, I'm going to turn the camera on, and it's going to come up with its own code here. I hit this button here, which goes into the, oh, come on. Can you hold it? Thanks. Hopefully my battery's on. Here we go. So it goes in the Hacker Development Kit. And then in there I'm going to run a script, which is going to, hopefully here. never works in the demo. All right, I'll play with that later when we're out in the field. But basically it runs a script, and with that script it's connected to a relay on the Pixhawk, which then allows me to go and in here I can hit a drop down, I can hit trigger camera now, that sends a relay to the camera and takes a picture. If I'm using the mission planner, that automatically happens at the predetermined locations based on GPS coordinates, so you get your nice camera grid. And that's really the only thing that's different about that one. What was that?
Question.
Yes?
I was just curious if your camera has to be on the entire time then.
It does. It does. So it's got a battery on there. You can also set up for external power for your camera if you want, but it's usually not an issue. So you turn it on, you load the script, and it says waiting on USB. You launch it, and once it starts getting that trigger, there's a special cable here that takes the relay and steps it to the right voltage for the USB trigger. There's a more advanced cable you can get where instead of hooking to the relay, you actually hook it to a servo output, and then you can actually adjust things like zoom and all of that. We just have this fixed for doing mapping. So let me go ahead, we can unplug that.
What's the maximum weight of that kind of
This one here, you could probably put a 2 to 3 pound payload on it. You can carry quite a bit, especially this is more of a powered glider format. So that's a real quick overview. We'll do more of it out at the field. Any questions on Mission Planner? Anybody else got hardware they want to show? Do you want to? Yeah.
Ian's got the hardware. One of you guys want to start first? Yours is already out there. Okay.
Yeah, I think I spoke briefly about this. So this is basically from a bunch of different suppliers. I did a blog post on DIY drones about this last week, so you can look on there. And I have a link to it on my presentation. But if you have to look for Simon D. Levy DIY drones. So this is a inexpensive carbon fiber frame, and if you've ever worked with carbon fiber, the downside is forget about doing anything to it because it's like titanium. I sit there with the drill. I just got a special drill bit to cut through it, but the upside is essentially it's unbreakable. So one guy who reviewed these frames was saying he wasted his money buying extra arms because they're never going to break. Basically, punch a hole in the wall before you break the carbon fiber frame. So that was only $40. That was from I think it was Multi-Rotor Superstore. Got those. I was looking at $140 carbon fiber frame from Italy, and then this is like a Chinese cloner that it's usually like a third of the price. And so it's a little 250 millimeter frame. Some little inexpensive ESCs, also from Multi-Rotor Superstore. The motors, that's often the hardest part. So if you buy your own components, you can pretty much, in my experience, you're guaranteed to have to wait 2 weeks for something. Usually it's going to be the motors. For some reason, these things seem to be really high demand. So the motor's only about $20 each, but again, you wait a couple of weeks. It's unusual for any supplier, Hobby King or whoever, to have simultaneously have, you probably want to have 5 of them, because one of them's going to break. And it's, so we put our own flight controller on there. It's a Flip 32, which is a clone of Naze, which is, in a way, a clone of the CC3D. If you follow, by the way, if you read any of the stuff on RC groups, there's really, really bitter fights about this.
Time cop? Oh, yeah.
Oh, time, yeah. These guys are nuts. They're geniuses. I mean, you look at the firmware for this, and it's like I could never, even 35 years of coding, come up with something like this. I tried writing my own firmware earlier in the summer, and the thing just like kept flipping over. Like, I'm just going to $25 to get something already made. But these guys are just always in each other's throats. So base flight now is it was the original. Clean flight now is the one that people are using. Those guys are scoring each other on.
Because he hates time cop.
Yeah. Well, if you go to, it's like, I told these guys, if you go to baseflight.com, this guy Dominic Clifton bought the domain name Baseflight and he flips it over to CleanFlight, which is like McDonald's buying Burger King, so that when you go to BurgerKing.com, it goes to McDonald's. Like, so that whole community, they're all like pretty much really mad geniuses. And there's a whole OpenPop community, which is a whole other really cool thing. But anyway, so I bought this little $16 flight controller, Flip 32, so you can solder anything on there, all the pins are there. And then, I think I mentioned before, bought a 3D printer. So basically just be able to make little legs and a little plate for it. So a combination of three different sets of standoffs, nylon standoffs from McMaster-Carr. Any size from like 3 millimeters up to like 30 millimeters. They make and then we just bolted on the Odroid. So they've not made up the cable to connect the UART on the Odroid, basically the serial port on the Odroid to the UART on the Flip. But once that's in place, we can start testing out the software these guys worked on. So
I had a question on why use a coprocessor? Why not just generate the PWM and just use like a Wii 6-axis, 9-axis gyro?
right, that's what I start. I've looked into that. So I actually had put money down on a Navio, which is a similar concept. So the basic question, if I understand, the question is like, why have two separate computers? Why have a flight controller? And the short answer is that the flight controller, like if you're doing Pixhawk or even they've solved the problem. It's really unlikely that there'll be a software bug in there. The firmware is solid. There's thousands or hundreds and hundreds of people who tested this stuff. Whereas if you do your own stuff, or if you rely on these guys who are doing like all Linux-based, I know Andrew Trigill's been working on that stuff. I think you're like, so Trigil had a post on this in DIY Jones 6 months ago, and he had a fixed wing vehicle. He said, well, we were running it was this Linux kernel, but it was basically Linux. It was a general operating system. It wasn't an RTOS or anything. And we had about 1.6 seconds of outage. Okay, so and he said it was basically, it was on a landing approach. It was a vehicle maybe about the size of what you guys were showing. And 1.6 seconds in a forward flight, if it's in a glide descent, is nothing. I mean, it's a tick-tock, okay, but one of these things, 1.2 seconds is the difference between it being stable and it being on the ceiling, and it happened in a third of a second. So the short answer is I don't trust.
So opposite direction, why have I forget what you just called
it. It was Odroid.
Odroid. Why have the Odroid at all when you can just fork clean flight and you've got access to all the open source out there anyway.
Right. So I'm slowly getting into firmware development. So I just got to the point where, and TimeCop calls it lame printf. He's got whole rants about why you're a sissy if you're supposed to use SWD pins.
Yep.
Okay, so you know all this stuff, right? So one reason I bought the Flip 32 was that you can solder on the SWD pins easily. Whereas with the Naze, these things are like 0.5 millimeter pads on there. So I eventually do want to get into
You do software serial too.
Right, yeah. But
sense.
long story short, this is a 1.7 gigahertz full-on computer. So this can run, Odroid, the Korean company, they show people playing video games, playing like, I don't know, Quake or something like that. So you've got a full-on, really fast quad-core computer that can do real-time AI, ROS, robot operating system, OpenCV. You just, sudo apt-get install OpenCV, wait 5 minutes, and you've got, the most powerful computer vision library in the world on your vehicle. That's never going to run on a 62 or 64 megahertz flight control, nor would you want it to. So, I mean, you're absolutely asking exactly the right questions, right? So one of the things I showed you before with that thing I did briefly with the optical flow, I'm hoping to take this thing off and have our own special purpose hardware, like maybe a Pixie Cam running optical flow. But the truth is, you look at the code for that, I mean, that is like megabytes of memory to do that, because they're using like floating point, 320 by 640 or 320 by 240 floating point, with multiple copies of the image to do the flow. Okay, so the flight controller itself doesn't have remotely the amount of processing speed or memory to do something like that, which is why kind of everyone's scratching their heads, like how did Harry do this like 5 years ago? Like they kidnapped some like rocket scientists to do this, because it's incredibly.
So is your intent to eventually port a clean flight or a base flight over to a Linux platform?
No, I don't. I haven't been in this field that long. So I only even started flying a couple of years ago on anything but like aerodrome. I would be happy to be proven wrong, but I personally think it's a mistake. I think it's a safety design mistake to have your flight controller, your primary thing that's keeping this thing from crashing into someone's skull. Okay, have it be running the same OS as something that's basically was designed to do video games and again, there's people who have invested money against that. These Navio, we bought a Navio and they kept postponing it. I said, just give me my money back. But Navio was basically an attempt to turn a Raspberry Pi, right? Or probably they claimed they could do it with Odroid, and as usual, the GitHub link was dead, right? So like that made me nervous. Like don't post a dead link, and ask me for $400 for your product. There's people who are basically trying to turn a single board computer like this into a flight controller. They'd even this guy Andrew Tridgell, who's like king of DIY drones, basically, has posted on that. But he said there was 1.6 second of dead time, right, when the OS decided to do something else. And they had custom built that kernel, but it wasn't a regular Linux kernel, which is insane. So that's exactly the kind of thing I'm afraid of. If the entire thing crashes, I'm not a couple $100, but there's a safety issue, and also the issue of you're talking about, right? Why, in terms of weight or something, what is this? This is like 3 to 6 grams for this little, and $16 for the little Naze or Flip 32, right? Like, I just don't want to invent that wheel. So that's the short answer. But if people may do this, I still think that the basic avionics of this thing is always going to be a special dedicated flight controller. Pixhawk on one end of it, or really cheap ones like KK2.
Yeah.
Look at that. Plus, if you want to do the companion board computer, that's going to be a separate component. I can't see integrating unless somebody really solves the OS issues. Right? So, and I think the fact that 3DR themselves, the Pixar guys like Tridgell, are pushing the companion board concept specifically with those makes me think that's probably the right direction to go.
Well, what motors do you have on there?
Oh, I can't remember. I posted I can't even read them.
Just sizing.
Oh, sizing? What are these? Can you?
Like 1804s.
Yeah.
1306s.
Yeah.
UIS. I don't even see it.
I can't see them. It's really off, but-
Yeah, it looked like an 1804.
Yeah, I can look on my blog. If you look at my blog post, it's the most recent one I did. It's part 1. Part 2 is a review I put on it. So that when I get back to Virginia.
Any other hardware for show and tell, or
I got
you
it.
want to do
I
that?
would like to go.
Yeah, Ian, absolutely.
I need to go grab them right outside the door.
Yep. When we get up to Bucas, we'll do a demo. We did get the 3DR Solo. The gimbal still hasn't shipped on it yet. They were doing some re-engineering on it. They weren't happy with the yaw sensitivity. But this is the other end of the spectrum. What's interesting about this one is this is great when we like to tinker. I like to tinker. It's a lot of fun. But we have other people like maybe film and media studies who really just want to explore the developed concept. This is a pretty solid concept. You'll see there's an app on there. It's got some cool features like cable cam. You say go here, you fly to another spot, go there, and then you move the stick and it just goes there. The hardest problem I have with that is I'm used to sticks do a certain function, and on this, depending on what you're doing, the sticks change, and that's just hard for me to wrap my head around, right? So I think sometimes it's too much flight time. You get used to that from this. And that's the cool orbit feature where you can pick an object, set a radius, and it will orbit around it, keeping the camera focused at that. So you can get some really cool shots. You can do some neat stuff with it. So we'll have this up to the Bucas, and we'll do some demo with that and let people get some time on it.
What is that?
This is a 3DR Solo, which is a really nice. And this runs a Pixhawk 2, which hasn't been released in any kind of thing.
So that's post-Iris?
Post-Iris. This only got shipped the end of July, middle of July.
They debuted it in AP.
Yeah, this is brand new. We had this on pre-order. We still haven't got the gimbal yet. It's got a fully integrated gimbal. And this is pretty interesting too. It's got an expansion bay on here. So although it's not available right now, this will support a optical flow.
I was going to ask
Sensor.
because everyone's
Yeah.
wondering about that.
Now our president who just left, we bought him. He actually was into this stuff. So Jeff got we bought him a Phantom 3. And that did have the optical flow, and you could tell, boy, that thing hovered inside like it was
those
nailed.
DJI. Yeah.
The DJI.
Yeah, they have a shot of it in a winery, like all these people drinking
Yeah,
wine.
and just,
like sitting
and just
there.
sitting there, But again, I was talking to Forrest about the one thing I personally like about the APM is not quite to the level of this, but with the DJI, I feel you have no visibility into what's going on. It's a very locked down system, and if it does a flyaway, you don't know. With the APM, I didn't show you, but there's full telemetry logs you can go in and analyze. That's how we're able to determine that. Is the camera still rolling? Turn the camera off for a second.
I can edit.
Yeah, okay. So when we did our simulation in last fall, we actually had a flyaway. And we tracked it for about 1.5 miles on the telemetry before it disappeared. So it's still up in the woods there somewhere. It's a Phantom 2 with a GoPro on it. But because I had the logs back on the computer, what had happened was is we bought it was actually a Phantom knockoff called a Quantum Nova, run the APM. And by default, it was set to a maximum 25-degree bank angle. And what had happened is where we are, you're up on a hill. The altitude we're at about 100 meters, the wind was blowing at about 20 meters a second. And so the maximum angle on the aircraft couldn't overcome the wind speed. So it was hitting this condition. So what happened is it basically blew away. We put it in return to launch, and it was trying to come back to us, but the wind just kept blowing and it just drifted downrange. And that was when, so the other one we've now modified. We can do like a 50-degree bank, and we can pretty much overcome anything. So it's just one of those things. You have these safety features. They're designed for one thing, but they can lead to unintended consequences. And what we should have done is downed it, but hindsight's 20/20.
So I'm on camera criticizing the time copy.
We can edit that too.
These guys are psychotic. seriously.
Cool. So I'm Ian and this is Tim, and we founded the Brandeis Maker Lab. And we do all the drone stuff on our own money and our own time after work, and more we're supporting local programs. But this is all our just passion projects. So you want to talk about yours?
Yeah, I'll talk quick. Very similar. I'm running off the 32 as well. I got 2206 Emax motors. I usually run 1800 milliamp hour 4S. And these are not rated for 4S, but they run 4S. Sometimes you throw magnets, sometimes you don't. The idea basically behind all of this that Ian and I have the mentality of is crash and rebuild. So you learn from your mistakes, and it's a lot more fun if I don't care about this, and I hit trees and I hit the ground and I break frames. And so this is fake Chinese carbon fiber, which is really fiberglass with a laminate on it, because it cost me $20, $30, and I can get it on Amazon Prime, or I can get it on Banggood for cheaper and wait 6 months.
It's also covered in dirt.
Yeah, it's covered in dirt. This quad is always on my. It's been on my desk in pieces more than it's been in the air, and that's almost preferable to me. I prefer that. It's more fun that way. So yeah, I usually have a Mobius camera on there. It's got the dampener, FPV. I got a printed bracket here to give me some tilt on that. I've got some printed other things that aren't on it right now. It's been stripped down. But so I went out of my way to make it more vehicle than I can actually handle, because I can dial that away in the Tyrannus and kind of learn how to fly. But I wanted something that I can grow into. So these are 5-inch props with a 3-inch pitch. It'll hit probably 60 miles an hour. I'm looking at...
We have videos of it at 60.
Right. I'm looking at like a 2.4, 2.5 to 1 thrust to weight ratio. If I put, and these can handle it, the 6 by 4.5s, then I have a terrifying vehicle. So I haven't gotten there yet. I'm thinking about it. Watching Drone Nationals made me realize that this is slow. Yeah. So there's those kinds of things. I'm a huge proponent of, if you're going to spend money on something, spend it on the ESC, spend it on the transmitter, spend it on your charger. The rest of this is consumable. This whole vehicle is consumable.
Totally consumable. And when we fly after work, we fly until we're out of props.
Right, yeah, batteries are almost never the limiting factor.
Yeah, we're never limited by power.
You break something, or you run out of time, or...
So this was my one that I built alongside him when we were doing that. I called this one the Catfish because it's all zip tied together. There's no screws, which is awesome because you have a mechanical fuse. So when it blows up, you just unzip tie it. The frame is $10. This is also $200. This is my $250 for $150 on Amazon Prime. So 250 millimeters for about $150 on Prime, so 2 days ship. The frame is $10 Amazon Prime.
Right, so we, very similar to what you had said before, a lot of this hobby is waiting. So you'll buy something and then you wait forever and then it eventually comes. And that's terrible. So that's what I did because I'm tremendously cheap. So this quad costed me more in frustration than it did money because I waited a lot. And he got his in like 2 days and it made me sad, but it costs barely slightly more. So you gotta get away your pros and cons with that aspect.
So this is CC3D, and this was the next one that I've been working on, and we've got a Naze that I'm going to throw on here probably while we're at the field and get it off the ground. V-tail, 3D printed entirely frame. There's 3 different materials. We iterate on a lot of different materials in our lab. So the purple part is PLA for the base for rigid structure. The arms are PETG, so it's like a clear bottle, like a Coke bottle, so they're flexy. It also folds up, so when it crashes, and for transportation, it does a little bit of folding. And the flight stabilizer is in bridge nylon, so it's very squishy. And if you land upside down, or if you have video on there, that's extra nice. Same thing, I spent most of the money on the motors and ESCs, and then a lot of time iterating parts and breaking a lot of 3D printed stuff. This actually crashes really well now. It didn't in PLA. And then what we're going to do tomorrow with Waltham High School is start a program with the Hubsan X4s, these little micro drones. And we buy toys. They're like $35 on Amazon Prime. We got them.
They're 26 right now.
Yeah, they fluctuate 20 bucks up and down, but it's 26 this week.
Shipped.
That's with the controller, the battery, the whole thing. We got the case, we 3D print new cases, and we iterate on frame shapes. And the first thing we're going to do with Waltham High School is just do frame design and see how that changes. The V-tail is awesome for if you're flying FPV because it steers more like a car. You don't have that problem where you're moving in one direction, you turn around, you have momentum. It's very confusing. You lose a little bit of lift, but you have a front with a V-tail. Problem is you're using a Hubsan flight board, so you have stock hardware. Tim wrote a guide he cobbled together from the internet on how to solder a USB cable on here and flash Bradway, so you can put custom firmware, do your own PID tuning. I did the opposite, where I tune PID from hardware. So if my PID is wrong, I source a bigger propeller, or I make a bigger frame, which will achieve the same sort
So
of thing.
Bradway is basically the dumbed down version of multi-Wii, which eventually turned into the 32-bit, which is on Clean Flight and the other software we were talking about before. So multi-Wii is where this all came from, and Bradway is the 8-bit, no floating point, stupider version of that, so that you can run it on this very simple hardware.
So this was my first quad. This is a retail, what is this, a 200QX?
Yep.
Blade 200QX. I gutted it out of the original frame. I bought a carbon fiber frame, and we were hitting the ground from 100 feet up at 50 miles per hour, like 50 times a day. And we blew up a lot of frames. I had it shimmed with popsicle sticks for a while so it could fly. And then I found that I don't want a solid frame. I want it to have a little bit of flex, because the motors aren't going to push enough to flex it. But when it hits the ground, I've hit the ground at 50 miles per hour, cartwheeled, spin, and come back up without a crash. Repeatedly with this. And we corrosion X everything because we splash. And yeah, so I don't know. Our whole quad mentality is crash and rebuild.
Awesome. Hey, in the interest of time, we're going to pack up. We're going to head up to the Bucas Center. So logistics-wise, we got a couple drones we got to load up. So I'm going to bring my car down to the loading dock.
So I would say,
Or how?
so everyone's parked up top, right?
Is everybody up top and they walk down?
Everyone's parked by gatehouse?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So why don't we caravan, and if we have, if you have free hands and can volunteer to bring a box or something with you, that'd be great. We'll get loaded up. We'll head up there. We got a tent up there and some tables and stuff, so we can spread out our equipment. We've got power, porta-johns, and so the rest of the day is just kind of informal workshop. You know, see what people are doing, ask questions. If you want to fly, we'll have different planes in the air.
Nice.
Who do you work with?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, well, he had a $50,000.
I think it was on Monday we went up to lunch and like odds.
Yeah, it's not right. I was looking at the black
Trying to explain like what he's trying to do for eating. And I was like,
CMR.
I couldn't remember if you were.
Yeah.
I told him something.
Oh, yeah, look.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Right.
Because it was
Clearly fiberglass.
That's what somebody was saying.
And if you did it with a multi-meter, I bet you that's...
I'll be talking to you later.
I didn't see your Vita. You didn't have those at...
No, because I had this in another frame. I only have 2 sets of hardware, so I keep destroying it
$40
and then building it into new frames and changing flight controls. But the electronics have been the same. for a
We're
while.
gonna have to try the VTEL. So we did the exact same thing. We actually bought a bunch of Hubsons because we were taking the oldest Phantom that we had
Yeah.
and showing them how to fly at the field. And this time it's like, you know what? Buying some Hubsons. This is the room you're gonna do it. Watch these like 5 videos from flight test. Now go do it.
That's such. I want to see what 5 videos you picked.
Well, they have a whole how to fly rotary.
Oh, so you just went to the how to fly rotary?
Yeah, how to fly rotary, and it's like learn to hover, and then like they got comfortable, and I'm like,
Now that I look at it,
and actually flying that indoors is such a
Right.
realistic translation.
Yep.
Because like the breeze of the door opening
Yeah.
will send it somewhere.
Yep.
rated for
So
12 amp.
Yeah.
it's so funny that like it actually works out okay in that particular case.
So yeah, I've got a solder.